Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joel Penhorwood with Ohio AgNet. Beside me, Matt Reese with Ohio's Country Journal. It is a pleasure and honor to be sitting with the new director for the Ohio Department of Agriculture, Ms. Dorothy Pelanda. Thank you so much, Director, for joining us here today.
Good to be here, Joel.
Thank you. And just like the changing seasons around us here, we also have a changing of the guard here at the Department of Agriculture. But like many in agriculture, we'd love to know a little bit about your background and a little bit about your background in ag specifically, if you could tell us about that.
Sure, I'd love to. You know, my family has been farming in Union County here in Ohio since the early 1800s. One of the most exciting things to me was the first day I was here on the job, I found a picture of my great-great-great-uncle Gideon Liggett, who served on the Ohio Board of Agriculture in the early 1900s. And I bring that history here. They were so kind as to move the picture into my office so that every day I could look at Gideon and remind myself to be humble and hardworking. I live on the family farm where I grew up in Marysville, Ohio with my husband Sam. And you know, growing up on the farm, we had a 10-acre pond and a 4-acre pond. And so on a very small scale, we learned to live and have a passion for the issues of, you know, fertilizer runoff, how that affected that beautiful pond of ours. Through the CAUV program, learned about what we needed to do in order to qualify in terms of wildlife and invasive species conservation and management. And so those are the kinds of ideals and experiences I bring to this. As director, I think the most important thing that I bring to this job is my innate interest and love of people. I'm a people person. And as a lawyer for 30 years in Union County and then a legislator for 8, I think my ability to build and sustain working relationships, my ability to solve problems through mediation, negotiation, and compromise are key elements to running this wonderful department. Am I going to get on a tractor this afternoon and plow the back 40? No, that's not what I do. But my relationships on Cap Square, my relationships around the state with the agricultural community and the political entities that are going to be so important to, one, getting our budget passed, having an audience for the people who are going to be impactful with regard to our budget, and for the legislation that's going to be very relevant and important in the next several years, are going to be things where my relationships with those organizations and those people on Cap Square are going to become critical.
Now, you mentioned your relationships in the political arena, and you also have, of course, the legal background,
yeah.
But maybe not necessarily that hands-on, in the dirt agricultural background. How do you plan to overcome that, and how will your other assets help you in this job moving forward with some of the really challenging issues facing agriculture in the next few years?
Well, first, we have an absolutely wonderful department here. We've got Timothy Derrickson, number one, who's been a 3-generation dairy farmer. We have others in the department that have also generational farmers who have an integral knowledge of the farming industry that will be real assets to me. We talk about some of the issues, the Lake Erie watershed and the Lake Erie issues, the ride safety issues, the puppy mill issues. All of these things I've dealt with as a legislator for the last 8 years. And so in being in the committee process, understanding the frailties sometimes of some of the legislation that's put forward, one, has given me a strong background with some of those issues. It's also helped me to develop the relationships with the key people that are going to continue to be involved in those very critical issues. And so, you know, one, I would like to say that Tim Derrickson is just such an asset to our department. And he and I will work very well together as a team. I knew Tim in the legislature as someone who, like myself, is a people person, is a very genuine person, who is also someone who believes that relationships and relationship building are key to moving forward on issues. And as I travel around the state introducing myself and working on those relationships, I know that Tim will be here to help me run the administration and the day-to-day department, and that will be wonderful.
And you mentioned water quality, and that, of course, is a huge issue for agriculture, and it will continue to be a huge issue. How do you see the Ohio Department of Agriculture fitting into that issue and working with agriculture, but also working with the Ohio environmental concerns with regard to water quality?
Well, of course, the soil and water conservation organizations in each county are part of and within the jurisdiction of the Ohio Department of Agriculture. So one of our goals right away is to start traveling the state, having regional meetings with these departments so that they can understand who I am, my passion for moving forward for these issues. You know, regulation does not have to be a nasty business, but it does involve creating and sustaining relationships where we can bring people together. We can push that reset button. We've got new players on the field with regards to these water quality issues. And I think the most important thing we need to do is to be a good listener. And when I talk about good listening to me is fully focused with an open mind. And that's the number one thing I need to do as I travel around the state. Build that trust with the farmers, the commodities, and other individuals who have such a key stake in moving forward in the right direction. And I would say to you in closing about that question, my loyalty is to the right solution, not to a particular entity or individual or group, but to the right solution.
And growing up around agriculture, you were certainly in a rural part of the state there. What are some of your favorite memories being attached with agriculture as a young person growing up? And while your career wasn't necessarily in that, what are some of your fond memories about agriculture and some of your family involvement there?
Well, 4-H was one of the two activities I was involved in as a youth, and it was a very strong organization in Union County, still continues to be strong. The highlight of our year was going to the state fair, sometimes with our project as we qualified to be a state fair entry.
Yeah, it's big time if you get there.
It's big time, but the connections they made and the 4-H camp where we got to meet people from other parts of the state of Ohio, certainly other parts of the county, and those are friendships that I still value and cherish today. So 4-H in my growing up years was an organization that my parents valued. They knew that organization would instill the values of me of discipline, hard work, getting to the finish line with a project on a detailed work schedule, and just being around good people, good leaders. The township halls, the township growing up to me, the township hall was the center of our family's activity. Everything from where my parents took us to watch them vote, to the ice cream socials, to the square dances. And so as an adult, township as a form of government is to me, boots on the ground government, and perhaps the most important voice for our farmers and the people in our rural community to connect with the state issues.
I think one more question. As your time as a legislator, as you bring it to the table from your representative days, is there anything that you spearheaded from that side, anything that really found a passion in your heart that you would like to bring to this job as director for the Ohio Department of Agriculture?
Well, again, each and every bill that I sponsored or that I worked with brought me a reality of how the process works. And I think for so many people, visiting the State House, sitting in a committee hearing is a really enlightening experience because we have the phrase, eating the elephant one bite at a time. And what that basically means is big changes require lots of little steps before we get there. Very proud to sponsor what was known as the Ag Omnibus Bill in 2014, where I sat down with Director Daniels and we looked through the statutes and said, here's a lot of things we could do to just make our department more efficient and a better servant to the people of Ohio. So everything from looking at the auctioneers licenses, changes to the weights and measures, and of course my visits out here to the Ag Department really instilled in me a passion for the great things we do here, the wonderful people that work here that just have a vast experience in plant species, invasive plant species, wildlife management. Our vet sciences department is just amazing. And so, I was proud to serve on the Ag Committee for 2 terms and really believe that enabled me to understand the importance, number one, of this department, but two, that ag is still the #1 industry in our state. And the good news is we've got a governor who's a farmer, who I think is going to really bring that rural focus through his administration to all parts of Ohio.
Well, we thank you very much for your time and sitting down with us today to talk about the exciting time ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Joining us with the new director for the Ohio Department of Agriculture, Dorothy Pelanda. For Matt Reese, I'm Joel Penhorwood. Thanks for tuning in.